In this lecture, I'm going to show you how to submit and reset your forms. By the end of this lecture, you're going to know how to call a function on our component when the user clicks submit. And you're also going to know how to reset a form back to its original state. So to submit a form in Angular, or just generally, we need a button with a type of submit in our form markup, in between the form tags. So I'm going to add one at the bottom of our form. So I add a button tag, the type is submit, and I've added just some nice stylings from Twitter Bootstrap, just so we can show a nice large big button. So now if I rerun the form, scroll to the bottom, you'll see that there is the submit button. So when pressing the submit button normally, this triggers the normal HTML5 form submission mechanism. So typically it tries to post the form to the current URL. But instead of issuing a standard post, we want to call a function on our component instead. And to do that, we use the ngSubmit directive. So we go to the top of our form to get to the top form element. And I'm going to bind to the output event ngSubmit. And because it's an output event, we then use the round brackets. I type the name of the directive, which is ngSubmit. And then I make that equal to the function that we want to call. And I want to call the function onSubmit. This hijacks the normal form submission mechanism and instead calls the function onSubmit on our component. And let's just actually create a really simple onSubmit function on our component. So all we're doing is first checking to see if the form is valid, and if it is, I'm just printing out a console log of form submitted. Later on, when we cover the section on HTTP, this is perhaps where you may call an API using HTTP. And just as a reminder, in this function, we can do whatever we want. And if we were to send some data via HTTP, we would probably want the values, the current values that are present in the form. And we can get that just by calling this.myform.value. And remember, they contain properties. So we could get the first name the user entered just by first name. So now if I rerun the application, let's open up the console and let's clear it. And then let me type in some data. Choose a language. And now when I hit submit, it will call the onSubmit function instead. And it's just going to print out form submitted and with the form value. And there we go. So in a model-driven form, to reset the form, we just need to call the function reset on our myForm model. And for our simple form, let's just reset the form once the user presses on submit. And now if I rerun the application, and now when I press submit, not only does it print form submitted in the console, but if we actually look back into our form fields, you can see they've been reset to their original condition. And by that, I mean that if you look at the email field, the touched is false and the dirty is false. So it's reset it as if the user hasn't even touched it or has never even entered a value into the input control. To summarize, we can bind to the ngSubmit directives output event to call a function on our component when the user submits a form. Then calling the reset function on a form model resets the form back to its original pristine state. So we can call functions on our component to process a form. However, Angular gives us another way to process a form's values by using reactive programming and RxJS. And we're going to cover that in the next lecture.